Well, we're at the Essential Tennis Court, and for those of you that have been demanding that I do tennis racket reviews on top of my tennis string reviews, I finally gave in. So here it is, the Yonex VCore 95 2021 racket review. This racket review will be extremely in-depth, so if you want to skip to a specific part of this video, I will leave timestamps down in the description below for you guys to go to. As a forewarning, I am not endorsed, and I never will be endorsed by any manufacturing company when it comes to tennis strings or tennis rackets. I pride myself on being an independent reviewer, so everything that I test will be purchased at full price. I want to do this because, one, I want to be able to give you guys the best possible content in a consumer-friendly light for you guys to make the best possible decision when it comes to your purchasing power as a consumer. Also, I want to be able to praise, criticize, and mock any type of product that I do playtest on this channel as well. The Yonex VCore 95 is endorsed by Denis Shapovalov. So you know what that means, right? Umpires will be very afraid of you if you were to purchase this racket as soon as they see it come out of your tennis bag because of this incident that happened a few years ago. Denis Shapovalov also probably got a recent paint job in the past month or two, because it's no secret that touring pros don't actually use the stock form rackets that they are quote unquote endorsing for marketing purposes. All of the pros at the ATP and WTA level have some sort of customization behind the racket that they actually use. Professional touring pros are just a marketing tool for major companies. You have to understand that. Don't buy into that bullshit. The Yonex has three main lines of rackets currently out for retail. There is the VCore Pro, which is the most control-oriented. There is the E-Zone line, which is a stable mix of control, flexibility, and power. And then there is the VCore, which is what the Yonex VCore 95 falls into. It is definitely more power-oriented and is more towards a traditional, modern Babolat racket that you guys have all seen on TV and probably at your tennis clubs as well. The things to notice on the VCore 95 in this demo is that the 95 square inch head size, along with the 16 by 20 string pattern, makes a string bed tighter than a line call in varsity high school tennis singles. This is the ugliest looking paint job of red I have ever seen on a tennis racket. I have no idea why anybody in the Yonex marketing or branding department would want this type of shade ugly red splash with some blue on it from time to time. And it seems like the racket color designer has had a seizure after 95% of the way done just painting red on the entire racket frame. But obviously, that's just more of a cosmetic comment and criticism. Hopefully it really doesn't affect on how it plays, right? I was actually a bit surprised that there was a VCore 95, because if you think about it, a smaller head size frame usually attributes and is more common towards a control-oriented frame. 95 square inches is considered a small head size nowadays, where most rackets for modern players are 98 or 100 square inches. I would expect Yonex, in all honesty, to have a 95 square inch racket on the VCore Pro line, which is a more control-oriented racket line. But hey, that's just my expectations. Let's see how it actually performs on the tennis court. From the baseline, the VCore 95 actually felt like a 98 square inch or 100 square inch head size player's frame. It felt very comfortable upon impact, even on slightly off-center hits that were about 2 or 3 inches away from the sweet spot of this tennis racket. And for being 95 square inches, I was also very happy because I didn't miss hit any ground strokes. I actually didn't miss hit at all. So if you guys are gonna be demoing this, you're gonna be very surprised at how plush and how forgiving this racket is, especially for a 95 square inch player control oriented frame. I also noticed that it went through the air extremely quickly, and it didn't have enough instability for me to question the weighting and balance of this racket in stock form. As I said, the slight mishits weren't punishing at all, and even the ones that were hitting towards the center of the frame and a little bit towards the throat of the tennis racket, it did lose a little bit of power, but it didn't lose any directional control, and it still had enough juice to go over the net when swinging at high velocity speeds, just like any modern player does from the baseline. The defensive shots on the run, especially with the forehand slices and backhand slices in a scramble panic mode, landed pretty deep on my opponent's side of the baseline. Usually when people think of smaller head size frames, like 95 square inches or lower, defensive shots are kind of an issue. But with this racket, given how lightweight it is for a 95 square inch head, defensive shots weren't necessarily a problem. They landed deep on the court with a good amount of slice and pace and height when I needed to for me to reset the point and get back on neutral ground after being in danger. Trust me, I was on defense a lot in this 4-hour playtest because Christian hits a very, very, very big ball. This is one of the best rackets I have playtested when flattening out forehands and backhands, kind of like approach shots, because the slightly tighter string pattern, although still technically an open string pattern, and smaller head size of 95 square inches really gave me control and directional feel when flattening out shots inside of no man's land and towards the service line. This is one of the best rackets for control and power when flattening out shots, bar none. This racket felt like a dream for my one-handed backhand. It actually really does feel it was made for one-handed backhand baseliners such as myself. It's no secret that I do like my backhand better than my forehand in basically every single match play situation, but this racket gave me inspiring confidence to both slice and to hit out and to loop backhands from the baseline all day. Top notches for one-handed backhands, and I would say if you have a one-handed backhand and you're a 4.0 NTRP or higher, give this racket a serious playtest before you buy your next one. I love this racket for the aggressive one-handed backhand slice, which is one of my best shots as a 4-5 singles player. It really changes the direction and the pace of a singles point. If I was able to really lean in with my right shoulder and put body weight behind it, this is one of the best rackets to slice aggressively, to knife just over the tape and die down on my opponent's side of the court. Again, that's assuming you could lean into it with your shoulder and your body weight. But when you did, the ball was a laser beam across the net and didn't bounce any higher than 3 or 4 inches from the baseline on your opponent's side of the court if you have good technique. One thing that really aggressive baseliners will start to notice with this racket is the flex is more towards the throat, which is a little bit weird because you normally feel a flex near the hoop of the racket for more modern players. But I believe that the flexing of the throat is an attribute of why I was able to absorb so much pace from the baseline, even if my opponent was hitting out on it best he could. It was a different feeling that I'm used to from even my Yonex E-Zone 98, which is currently the racket I play with. But it was kind of a welcome change. I really enjoyed feeling the flex on the throat for both my forehand and backhand ground strokes on this racket compared to more of a flex on the hoop that most players are kind of accustomed to nowadays. Because of this flex, it felt like it was arm-friendly and stable without losing that pop feeling and that popping sound from the baseline when you're really able to swing out on it. Don't get me wrong, even though I gave this racket high marks from the baseline so far, it's not perfect. I didn't feel like the ball ever bit into the string bed. Again, probably because of the tighter string pattern of 16 by 20 and the smaller head size of 95 square inches. This was very, very apparent on my forehand ground stroke. I didn't feel like I had the right trajectory and enough spin on the ball coming off my racket, even if I did load up on my forehand best I could. Although the racket did provide pop on my ground stroke, and this racket does sound awesome, I didn't feel like I got too much free power at all. If I wasn't able to get my legs underneath it in an aggressive manner, yes, the ball might have ample spin to get over the net and good height, but it landed just a little bit short. This is different from a scramble shot, because a scramble shot, you're just getting back to the court, to the center of the court fastest as you can, and you actually want something high and loopy to give yourself some time to recover back into a neutral position to reset the point. But if you're slightly off balance and you're hitting a topspin shot, it's not gonna land as deep as you probably think it would. When I was trying to be aggressive on my backhand slice, but I wasn't fully able to lean into it with my body, meaning my shoulder and my legs, the slice did sit up just a little bit too much for me, and it landed probably about 2 to 3 inches shorter on my opponent's side of the net, 2 to 3 inches shorter than I would have hoped. This is weird because on one end of the spectrum, when I'm on defense on scramble shots, and if I do a defensive shot to have it loop high over the net for me to get back to the middle of the court, it was perfectly fine. And then when I was able to set up with my legs aggressively on a backhand slice, it knifed through the air like a dream. But when it's somewhere in the middle of those two spectrums, it just sat up a little bit too much for me. This might be a problem for higher level tennis players from the baseline, because there are times when you can't set your feet enough, but you want to hit aggressively. It's going to land just a little bit shorter than you expect, at least from my playtest experience. By the way, if you guys have enjoyed this informative original tennis content, please hit like and consider hitting subscribe for more original tennis content that is uploaded very regularly. I do live stream on YouTube Tuesdays and Thursdays, 7 p.m. Central Time, so if you have any questions that I can't get to in the comments down below, feel free to hop in and I'd be more than happy to answer it as soon as humanly possible. Thanks. Being a 95 square inch racket, a more control-oriented frame in the VCore line of Yonex's tennis manufacturing department, you'd expect to have really good volleys with this, and to no surprise, it was fantastic. The racket was really easy to get around the net, even on the quick reaction volleys where the ball is coming in a lot faster than you expected. Maneuverability is definitely not a problem for this racket for both volleys and ground strokes. The torsional stability was damn good for this racket. Again, this racket is fairly good when it comes to the torsional stability and the slightly light weight of 11.5 ounces in a 95 square inch head size frame. The ball never really went further or shorter depth-wise than you would expect on the volleys, which is absolutely good. It's a predictable, stable racket. And even the high backhand volleys where I was slightly reaching a little bit too much, I had a good amount of pop on it and obviously very good directional control. And for the negatives for volleys of this racket, there are none. This is one of the best volley rackets that is out there on the market right now.
No, pass back. Sure.
The racket, from the service return perspective, went through the air extremely quickly. And that is attributed because it is a smaller head size and it is a fairly light frame. However, there were some slight instability issues and slight loss of control on bigger cuts on the service return. This is a bit off because in my Groundstrokes section of this tennis racket review, it actually was very stable and actually absorbed a lot of impact from the baseline. But you're gonna feel a slight twist and slight bend when it's not supposed to on service returns, even if you do hit it in the center of the strings. And even on the block returns, where it's kind of like a volley, you're gonna feel something hollow. It's not gonna be plush, probably because this is a slightly stiffer racket, but you don't feel that hollowness at the net when you're hitting volleys. However, even with that hollow feeling in mind, it still does go directionally and depth-wise where you want your service return to go to.
Where do you want it? Anyway.
This racket felt awesome for flat serves. It felt like it gave me an extra 5 to 10 miles per hour on a flat serve for both the do side and the ad side, no matter where in the box I was aiming. There was no torsional instability, and the way that this racket cut through the air for both first and second serves, it felt like it was faster through the air than the baseline. And from the baseline, as I previously said in that section, it went through the air pretty damn fast. However, this is not a perfect serving racket. I felt like for spin serves, there was not enough natural bite on the ball, and that's probably because of the tighter string pattern and the 95 square inch head size. And in order to compensate for that, I really needed to use my legs and dial back a bit on the pace in order to get ample amounts of spin and kick for me to feel comfortable starting a point. I'm not saying that there wasn't any spin on serves here. I'm just saying that it doesn't give as much bite as you probably would expect to for a more modern tennis player's racket. So if you guys rely on heavy spin or heavy kick serves, either look for a different racket, or you might want to think about changing your setup on this string if you're going to demo it. Overall, I'm actually pretty damn happy with this racket. A lot of people would be asking if this is a type of racket I would be switching to, and in all honesty, the answer is no. I would switch to this racket if this gave just a little bit more bite on my second serves and my forehand ground stroke. But other than that, I was pretty happy and very well impressed by this playtest. It's a really good offering from Yonex. I would highly suggest you try or demo this frame if you're a classic, all-around, or an aggressive baseliner type of singles player, or even if you play a lot of doubles, as it's very, very good for volleys and very easy to maneuver around at the net. Also, if you don't mind losing a little bit of spin potential for a little bit more control on a tennis racket, try this frame. You'll be pleasantly surprised. However, I would advise you don't demo this racket if you are a heavy baseline grinder and rely purely on massive spin potential coming from your racket and your strings. Please look elsewhere. Also, if your racket is going to be the one to give you the most power off of your ground strokes instead of using your legs and good technique, again, I would highly suggest look elsewhere. This racket is awesome from the baseline and it gives plenty of pop, but it doesn't do the work for you. You need to get your legs under the ball and swing with high racket head speed for that biting depth to push your opponent back from the baseline. A good question in this video is what can Yonex do better for the next line of the VCore 95. Because this is a pretty good racket, although not perfect. I would say have a slightly heavier stock. Instead of maybe 11.5 ounces or whatever it's listed at, maybe make a tour version, kind of like the Yonex E-Zone 98 Tour. But to compensate for this as regular consumers, you can definitely try this racket in stock form as it is and then add maybe a little bit of lead tape, either towards the side of the racket or maybe towards the hoop, just for a little bit more oomph and hopefully a little bit more spin potential. Also, I would be interested to trying this racket at a 16 by 19 string pattern instead of the 16 by 20, just for a little bit more bite from the baseline. So as always, I hope you guys enjoyed this racket review. Hopefully there will be more to come. And as always, happy hitting.